Hello and welcome, Star People. This is APM, your intrepid star guide, and this is the Outlaw Astrology Podcast. And today's focus is on the third court card exploration. We're talking about the Queens. And so the Queen is fixed energy. It's receptive. It's an expression of each suit. It explores sovereign power and explores lived authority, lived experience through receptivity, and it's the nurturing command of wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. And so this is the third of 4 court card episodes, with the Queens representing the water element and the energy of deep emotional intelligence, intuitive mastery, and creative sovereignty. Before we get to the topic at hand, we have a newsletter. It's called the Outlaw Astrology's Daily Stargazer Newsletter. There is a paid and free version. You'll find more about that in the show notes. We are on Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can find those links also in the show notes. And thank you very much for tuning in today. And now let's get down to it. So, let's step into the Queens. So let's understand the Queens better. They are considered the water of the suit. Now, caveat, this is Golden Dawn associations and correspondences. Golden Dawn was a grouping of creatives who were also ceremonial magicians, and one of the most famous and controversial figures from that grouping, which came into being in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, is Aleister Crowley, who was a member of the Golden Dawn, along with the Rider-Waite-Smith, Rider and Waite being the publisher and the author, and Smith being the artist who drew the Rider-Waite-Smith deck on which we are basing this discussion. And all of them belong to the Golden Dawn with Aleister Crowley. And so let's step into it. The Queens represent the water element. They are expressing their element through the suit. And so that's a deep receptivity. It's emotional authority and skill. It is being the sovereign, or sometimes the nurturer archetype. And so Queens embody mature femme power. Let's make a note about the femme. It doesn't matter, male, female. It's very gendered because at that time it was gendered. But now, a queen can be male, female, or however a person chooses to identify themselves. If they identify with queen energy, that's just fine. This is not a gendered thing, even though the language is very gendered, hence the caveat. So, we're talking about intuitive command, the ability to hold space, the wisdom that comes from deep internal knowing. Now, these are not gendered experiences. Someone who identifies as male, or identifies as they, them, or Z or Zir, etc., can also have intuitive command, can also have the ability to hold space, can also have wisdom that comes from a deep internal embodied sense of knowing, a felt sense of knowing. This is another thing that I would call the Queens for. That's felt sense of knowing. And it does not mean that this is only for people who are gendered femme or have transitioned into femme gender. That is nonsense. That gendering nonsense has just got to end. And that's the end of that rant right there. So, anyone who feels called to work with the Queen energy and has felt a connection to the ability to hold space, the ability to be intuitive, the ability to have wisdom that comes from one's own embodied nonlinear sense of knowing, welcome. The Queens are definitely also for you. Okay? And so the Queens are masters of receptivity. So they embody their suit. They're basically living that suit from the inside out. They're not trying to perform it. They're not trying to be it. They are it. That's role model energy. That's mentor energy. So their suit's essence is through emotional intelligence. And also emotional autonomy. It is non-linear. We're talking about intuitive action. We're talking about knowing when to take action in non-linear ways that cannot be easily explained through facts, figures, and empirical data. It is the power to create and to nurture from a place of fullness. By the way, fullness reminds me of sadness. Once upon a time, sadness meant the fullness of an emotion. It did not mean depression. Okay, so that is queen energy in its fullness and its entirety. So note this. The queens indicate mature energy, mature intuitive energy, mature nurturing energy, mature internal knowing, and mature wisdom. And that means it's going to be through lived experience, because here on this podcast and in my life and anybody having to do with me, the whole point of the exercise is to learn to trust your lived experience over theories, your lived experience over opinions, especially if they belong to other people. What they do not have access to is your heart, your soul, your spirit, your thoughts. They only know what you tell them. They cannot see it or divine it by mere observation alone. It requires curiosity and inquisitiveness to ask a question. And so queen energy is embodying that energy. It is asking the question because you have the emotional intelligence to know that there's more to the story than you can see. And that is the queens, how I would define the queens. And so it's not wisdom through feeling. Powerful, nurturing figures. It's periods requiring deep intuitive knowing and emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty means that your feelings are yours. And you are free to define them in whatever way you choose, even if the overculture or other people are uncomfortable or don't believe that or disagree. Okay? So that's queen energy. Queen energy is role model energy. They role model what this energy should look like when it's at its best, when it's at its most full, at its most effervescent, at its most evanescent, is the whole point. Okay. And so if we're going to understand the queens, let's look at them individually. And so the four queens are water of fire, water of water, water of air, and water of earth. So let's start with the Queen of Wands. That's water of fire. So this is a passionate confidence. This is charismatic leadership. It is creative power rooted in authentic self-expression. That means that I want to be seen and heard, but it's going to be on my terms, and it's going to be based on what I know to be true within me, as opposed to what other people would prefer I perform, for example. So it's the sovereign energy, and that commands through magnetic presence and warm inspiration. And so this person is gregarious and warm. If you saw them or experience this type of energy, it comes off as very gregarious, very warm, and also a bit direct. There is no time for equivocation. There is no time to wait. Life is happening, and Queen of Wands energy is very dialed in to that pulse of life, is how I would describe it. And so next up we've got the Queen of Cups, and that's water. And I say it here, but I also have a challenge with the word mastery. Mastery suggests a fixed and absolute ending, meaning you've mastered emotions and there's nothing else to learn that's not possible. Let's say that it's more of a emotional intelligence, emotional wisdom. It's knowing when, learning how to read the room so you know how best to respond. The Queen of Cups, water of water, is doing so using emotion. And she's looking around the room and reading emotions. It's like, okay, this person seems a bit, depressed. This person seems very restless. I'm feeling restless energy. This person seems very calm and a little peaceful. This person seems a bit sad. And so that's the Queen of Cups reading the room. When we talk about emotional mastery, we're really talking about emotional intelligence, emotional wisdom, and also understanding that the Queen of Cups may walk into a room and see a person who's a little bit sad sitting there. And she does not immediately say, oh, I feel so sad now. I'm sad. Why am I sad? And then get to cheering this person up without asking any questions. The Queen of Cups would walk into the room saying, I sense sadness and I see a person who might be sad, and decide from what she's feeling internally. Well, if I see sadness, how are you feeling? How are you doing? She doesn't assume sadness. She thinks, I'm thinking sadness. Let's check on this person. How you doing? How you feeling? What's going on there, friend? To which the person can say, I'm very sad. Oh, what's going on about that? Do you need an ear, or would you like to be left alone? I'd like to talk. And this is how the Queen of Cups moves through the world. Okay? And so this is compassionate healing. This is the intuitive sovereign. Now, sovereign, we're talking about autonomous. We're talking about someone who understands they are their own thing, their own being, their own person. And so they're there to hold space for all the emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, even the ones the overculture tells us we shouldn't feel, because we should truly be happy all the time. But the Queen of Cups is more intelligent than that. She's like, well, I've lived life quite nicely. My lived experience tells me that people are not going to be happy 100% of the time. That's not likely. So I have to hold space for those within my ecosystem, because sometimes they need navigation. Sometimes you need someone to help co-regulate because you're way out of control. And that's where you get the Queen of Cups, the co-regulator. You know, the parent when you're a kid and you're upset about the monster underneath the bed, and she doesn't say, oh, stop it, go to sleep. There's no such thing as monsters. That's one way to handle it. But the Queen of Cups does not handle it that way. The Queen of Cups says, oh, the monster. Well, let me look at it. Let me see. Let me get a torch. Let me have a look. Oh, I see the monster. Or they say, I don't see the monster. But here, let me help you. I see that you're concerned. So let me deal with that fear. Let me calm my child down. Let me soothe them. Let me help them. Let me help them with a ritual to help them become brave. Because one day, there's going to be no monster under the bed. One day, they're not going to be afraid of a monster. They're going to be afraid of something very real, very present, and the Queen of Cups is going to learn alongside her child. So the Queen of Cups is the parent co-regulating, teaching their child to regulate their emotions, and co-regulating, because someone having emotion can also trigger other people. And maybe that first emotion is to be impatient, and then the Queen of Cups says, okay, this is a child I'm talking to, this is they're 5, they don't know that monsters aren't real, and me telling them that monsters aren't real isn't going to make the fear go away, so let me handle that fear. Let me be there to help them regulate. I see that you're feeling fear. Let me help you with that. Let's breathe together. Let's look under the bed together. Trust me, I'll be here, and I've got a weapon that fights monsters. And let's look, okay, and then we can regulate continuously until eventually a more age-appropriate fear turns up that we can now co-regulate through that. And so that's the Queen of Cups, water of water. Holding space while maintaining clear boundaries, being deeply wise, meaning you say to yourself, wait a second, let's not lose control here. This is a child we're dealing with. Maintaining clear boundaries, well, they have to learn to regulate their emotions, but they need to learn it from somewhere, and so I must be their mentor. I must be their role model when it comes to this, okay? And so now we're going to look at the Queen of Swords. That's water of air, and this is intellectual clarity through emotional experience. This is honest communication. This is perceptive truth-telling. This is the sovereign, meaning autonomous energy that cuts through illusion, and it does so with compassion. It's discerning, but it's compassionate. So it is when you hear your friend sharing, that close friend who's always jumping on every trend known to man, and you're, let's say, teenage years, because this is fun. I like the previous example, so I'm going to follow up. And so the kid's now a teenager, and now they're telling you, as their parent, their caretaker, very odd things, hypothetically speaking, very odd things. You're like, wait a second, no, that's not how sex is. No, that's not how money works, dear. No, that is not accurate information. Well, as your kids get older, as they get into middle school, they're going to come and secondary school, they're going to run up against people who are not the same age as you, the caretaker, but are their age, who are dispensing what is going to most certainly be inaccurate information that you don't want your own child to have. So what do? Well, you're going to have to be honest. And here's why. You start honesty at an age-appropriate way. So this parent is being age-appropriately honest. There are no monsters. That's what they tell the 5-year-old. and then they help emotionally regulate. And when we're the Queen of Swords, we're moving into primary school, into middle school, the kid realizes there's no monsters, but then there are very real monsters in the world, very real threats, and the kid's afraid. School shootings, violence outside of the home. You got to go out in the world. Now you got to have that discussion with your kid, hypothetically. You got to have that discussion now, okay? Alrighty, so that's being honest. Yes, the world is frightening. Yes, sometimes you're going to run up against people who appear one way, meaning that friend who turned out not to be a friend. And now you have to help the kid through that. And it's like, okay, you're going to meet up on occasion with people who are not as they claim or not what they say. That's honest communication. The reason why we do this is because at some point you need honesty and trust to build with children, so that in a time when it becomes dire, when it's necessary, they will know to come to us and not other children who basically don't know what they're talking about. And so the Queen of Swords, Water of Air, is cutting through all of that nonsense. It's cutting through all the verbal noise, all the opinions. Everybody's got an opinion, and those opinions and beliefs do not have to be accurate. And so the Queen of Swords is cutting through that illusion. It is also at work when we're hearing gossip about what's happening, or, another colleague. It's the Queen of Swords that says, you know what, we don't have any proof of any of this. All this is just rumor and supposition, and it is not doing us any good in this room, because all it's doing is making us all very scared and very paranoid. And so it's that truth-telling voice that says, we don't have any information. We're either going to get information, and that would be advisable, or we're going to stop talking about this topic and move on to something else, because this doesn't seem to be getting us anywhere. It's being in, for example, a meeting where no decisions are being made on a corporate level, because this is the meeting to make decisions, and we all walk away with no decisions, and everybody's talking over everybody else, and it's the Queen of Swords that pops in and says, you know what, this isn't working. We're all talking over each other. We all have opinions. We're all convinced we're all right, and this meeting is not productive. We have not made a decision, and we're here to make a decision. And so that's the Queen of Swords cutting through all that noise with precise, perceptive truth-telling, and done in a compassionate way. Doesn't blame anyone. It just says we're not getting anywhere. So what do we need to get back on the road? What do we need to do to get back on point? And then the questions will happen. So how are we going to get back on point? What seems to be the challenge? What is the problem going on here, etc.? And then we can all find out why everybody's upset. How everything is veered off course. That would be the Queen of Swords, Water of Air, in action. And now we got the Queen of Pentacles. That's Water of Earth. And that is abundant nurturing, practical wisdom, grounded sensuality. And this is the sovereign who creates material security and comfort. And it's an intuitive understanding of physical needs, meaning that's nonlinear wisdom. When you hear intuitive, think nonlinear. Nonlinear meaning ways of knowing that are not empirical, not objective, meaning external, out there, something that's observable and measurable in time, or something we can quantify. It's some other way that's not easy to explain. And so the Queen of Pentacles sees a friend and is walking with a friend, and they're just enjoying a nice little walk on the beach, and they notice the friend is limping, and they're like, I've noticed that you're limping. What's going on? My ankle hurts. Let's sit down and have a sit and maybe chat and have a bit of the tea that we brought along, and you have a rest. What's going on with your ankle? That sort of thing. So understanding of physical needs. Well, I hurt my ankle 3 weeks ago, and I'm hobbling, and I'm trying to get back to work, and I'm trying to push through the pain. It's like, oh, you're in pain? Oh, let's not push through it, dear. Let's sit down, let's rest, let's let that ankle have a break. It will heal when it's ready to heal. We do not want to push it. I understand your need to want to get back to your old life, but this is a pause point. And that is the Queen of Pentacles responding to an injury with a grounded understanding of how bodies actually work and what is best for the body. In the long run, taking a rest, taking a break, allowing the ankle, in this hypothetical story here, to heal and to come back to itself in its own time is much better for the person in the long run than trying to push through it, because
in order to push through something, you have to borrow from stores, from the energy, the finite energy that we're going to need tomorrow is going to be used today and will not be there tomorrow. Bodies are finite, and the Queen of Pentacles understands that on an intuitive level and has a non-linear sense of noticing that someone's limping, and not just limping heavily and going, you know what, I think I should ask about my friend, what's going on, because I care, and also because I want them to be comfortable, okay? And so that is a way that we can look at all of the queens. Now, each queen is a channel of their suit, so the essence of it. So we've got the receptivity, the intuitive influence, making lived experience an internal experience as opposed to just a mental experience or an external experience. It's also emotional, it's deeply felt rather than externally proven. So all the queens, it's about non-linear. When we're talking intuitive, we're talking nurturing, we're also talking to our bodies. And to quote, it's allowing our bodies, which, are animal in nature, to love what they love. So it's allowing our animal body to love what it loves, to be hurt by what it's hurt by, to dislike what it dislikes, love what it loves, and etc. And that is all the queens in different ways, allowing their lived experience and their felt sense to make decisions, determinations on which way they're going to go and how they're going to show up in the world. Now, we're going to do a practical reading with the queen. So it's questions of non-linear knowing, embodied sense, and sovereignty, as well as felt sense of knowing. So, the queens speak to questions about mature energy, femme or otherwise. It is about emotional mastery. It's about knowing, non-linear ways of knowing. It's about how to nurture and ability to hold space whilst maintaining autonomy. Meaning, I can be here for you in your emotions, but without actually taking those emotions on, or that opinion, or that energy, or those ideas for myself. I can understand that I am me, you are you, and I can still hold space for a sad person without feeling the need to be sad myself. That is what therapists do when we come to them with a challenge. They have to be present with us, help us process our emotions, but they cannot jump into the fray and get angry with us if we're angry. They cannot get sad with us if we're sad. They cannot be explosively happy with us when we're explosively happy, because they are trying to maintain an objective distance that allows them to assist us should we get into emotional, mental, etc. terrain that is uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and would lead to disillusionment, disenchantment, and confusion. And so you could also see a therapist as embodying, in a sense, queen energy. And so let's do an example. So let's say, how should I approach my career? And we draw the Queen of Swords. And so we could interpret this as, we want to approach our career with a sense of emotional clarity. And emotional clarity basically means we're clear about how we feel about it. So what do we feel about our career? And also honest communication. That's honest self-reporting. Okay, I'm actually not filled with my career right now. For the sake of hypotheticals, let's say I'm not happy with my career right now. I'm feeling a little bored. I'm feeling disenchanted. I'm feeling restless. I'm feeling all of these things all at once, and I would like to make a change, or I want to transition. Okay, I'm feeling bored. I'm feeling restless. I am feeling like I want to make a change. Okay, that's honest. Where do I feel that? Boredom is a sense of ennui. I don't feel that in any one place. Restlessness feels like being prickly all over. Okay, that's honest communication, meaning honest self-reporting internally. So, in this instance, I would need to trust my perspective, my perceptive and perspective ability. So I need to trust my perceptions and maintain compassion. understanding, okay, this is happening in the moment. If I ask this question tomorrow, I might not get the same answer. So in this moment, this is how I would answer. And so I might also decide to ask this same question, how should I approach my career, to see if the answer is still the same. Do I still feel the same? Is the card the same? How would I interpret that? So let's say we did it tomorrow. How should I approach my career? And we don't get the Queen of Swords. We get the Queen of Cups. I was about to say Wands, but I decided to go with Cups. So we got the Queen of Cups of how to approach our career. And so we're talking about emotional, a felt sense, emotional embodied, a depth about this. So you need to have deep wisdom, clear. Okay, so Queen of Cups is very intuitive and might feel motivated to make a decision based on this feeling. Okay, the feeling today is I am not as bored, but I am feeling a little downcast. I'm feeling a little down. The boredom that I thought was boredom is actually me feeling a little down. Not depressed, just down. The energy is kind of dragging, feels a little heavy. It's like carrying an anchor, pulling an anchor to shore when you're in a boat. That's how it feels. And the restlessness is a sense of urgency. I feel like I want to make a move, and it feels like I need to do it now. And the Queen of Cups says that we need to approach this situation with compassion for where we are emotionally while setting boundaries. It feels like it's heavy. It feels like I'm dragging an anchor. That restlessness is more like I want to take action. I feel like I need to do something right now. I feel like an internalized pressure. Okay, that's honest. The Queen of Cups would be approach this situation with compassion and a felt sense. So where are you feeling your body, and what small action, could you take? Because you want to get those emotions calm. I don't believe in making decisions based on emotion, per se. So were I this person, I'd be like, I need to take a step back. I need to investigate further. At which point, which would lead me to maybe another question, asking the same question on a third, fourth day, and pulling the Queen of Wands. And the Queen of Wands is about passionate confidence. It's about charismatic leadership. At which point, when I've got the Queen of Wands in play, I would say I should probably take some small action. Nothing too big, but something small. Because I don't want my nervous system to get upset. I don't want it to do what's called the demand avoidance, meaning I shall do this tomorrow. I will do it tomorrow. I need to do it tomorrow. And then you don't do it tomorrow. That's the reason why. It's called demand avoidance. And what that means is once you make it a thing that needs to absolutely happen, your nervous system says, that's dangerous. That's a threat. No, I'm not about to do that. That seems like I might get eaten. I might get killed. Nope. And then it doesn't happen. That's why it doesn't happen. So when I see the Queen of Wands in the third reading about the same question on my career, I understand now would be a time to take action because Wands energy is action oriented. So take action, but take small action, nothing too grand, something that's like, hey, what would be the most fun I could take? Most fun action I can take towards this change. I'm noticing that I'm feeling heavy, a little restless, a little bored. What can I do to change it up? It doesn't necessarily have to be about career. Maybe it's a hobby, or maybe I can explore other career options. Try it on for a day, or try it on for a minute or an hour. Just explore it and see what that's like and lean into that energy, that fiery Wands energy. Okay? And so that's one way that we could absolutely do that. And so when we're looking at queens often indicate emotional maturity. It's a fullness of the cycle. So rather like full moon energy.
And sometimes it requires deep intuitive engagement, autonomous decision making from a place of wholeness, meaning that you don't look outside of yourself looking for an answer, because the only answer you're going to get is what other people think you should do. And sometimes people are afraid or distracted, and they're going to answer from that state, which may not be the best way to hold space for us where we happen to be. So this is the reflection here. Which queen energy do you, dear listener, feel you embody? Where are you called to step into autonomous mastery, meaning sovereign mastery? How can you nurture the fullness, the wholeness of you, meaning you got a lot of parts. Some of them are in shade, some of them in complete darkness. How can you operate from a place of your cup being filled and welcoming in all those other voices within you, rather than a place of rejection and depletion? Because the queen is all about being full and being well stocked, especially if it's the Queen of Pentacles. And so the key takeaway here is queens teach us that true power comes from receptivity and emotional intelligence and autonomous and wisdom. And so autonomy is earned through deep self-knowing. It is the courage to nurture yourself and others from a place of fullness, a place of wholeness, meaning you put on your oxygen mask first so you can be of help to others. You do not help others from a place of depletion, which would be doubt, worry, etc., or even anxiety. And so I invite you to draw a queen and ask yourself, where are you being called to step into sovereign power? What does that look like to role model this energy through being receptive rather than force? Receptive meaning being open, being willing, being curious. Okay? And so the next episode, when we're talking about the kings, we're going to explore the cardinal, commanding energy that externalizes our skills and experience through active leadership. So thank you very much for listening today. And once again, there is a newsletter, the Outlaw Astrology's Daily Stargazer free and page. You can find that link in the show notes. You can find us on Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. Those links also in the show notes. And if you'd be so kind as to rate, share, and review on whatever podcast platform you listen on, that would be extra wonderful, because it helps other people find us quickly as well. And with that, thank you very much. Peace and Astro Magic, Star People.